Hey guys, this is Chris Brigandy from Brigandy Coins and Collectibles, New York City. We just got in some awesome vintage baseball items. I just wanted to share them with you. So right here we have this really cool, it's probably the coolest book of vintage sports memorabilia we've ever had here. In 1934, Major League Baseball sent an all-star team to Japan, and it was called the 1934 Tour of Japan, headlined by Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and a chock full of bunch of other Hall of Famers. Everybody on the team received this book here. There's about 20 copies maybe made, 10 of which or less maybe are known today. So the first page here is signed by everybody who went on the team. So obviously first, Babe Ruth always claims the top space there. Below him is the manager, Connie Mack. And then you'll see a bunch of other Hall of Famers and other names you'll notice. Lefty Gomez, Earl Averill, another Hall of Famer. You got a gorgeous Lou Gehrig down here. Unique is that it's a large size. Obviously, if you collect baseball memorabilia, you know he always signed pretty light and usually small. So this is a nice full-size signature there. Below here you have Jimmie Foxx, obviously 500 home run club hitter. And then on the bottom here you have Satoru Suzuki, who through a quick research, he was basically the liaison between the Americans and the Japanese. So he kind of set up and managed all the the games and the tours and the matches between the Americans and the Japanese. They played 18 exhibition games, and the United States won all of them at the time. Also, one other important signature I wanted to point out here is Mo Berg. If you looked into his stats, you'd see that he's just basically a backup catcher, a journeyman at the time. But there's an interesting story about why he was included on this all-star team of sluggers. So at the time, not in the 1930s, the political relations between the United States and Japan were very contentious, obviously. So he was put on the team, not by Connie Mack, the manager who put the team together, but he was put there by the United States government. Mo Berg's background was he's a Princeton graduate, Columbia Law School, and he spoke like 7 different languages. And by all research, he was basically an intellectual of the time. The United States government sent him as a spy, and he photographed and videoed many areas that were potential bomb sites. And it came out way after this that the United States government, used that footage for future bombings and to map out certain areas of Japan. And they traveled all over from Tokyo to all these other cities. So it was really important, obviously. But there's a great book called The Catcher Was a Spy. And there's actually a movie coming out, I think it's in 2018, later this year, called The Catcher Was a Spy. But I'm going to go to the next couple pages here. The second and third page are actually the Japanese teams. So they played a bunch of different teams, but there's 2 teams here. It's all Japanese signatures. There's obviously difficult to read if you don't read Japanese, but there's one signature that's really important, is Eiji Sawamura, and he was a 17-year-old pitcher in Japan at the time. And why that's important is because he actually struck out Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmie Foxx, and Charlie Gehringer, 4 batters straight at 17 years old. And after the game, Connie Mack went up to him and said, "We want to bring you to the United States. You know, you're a great young pitcher. You're going to do really well in the United States." And he actually turned the offer down. And there's a crazy quote I found online saying, "He will never come to America. He hates Americans." And, see you basically see you later to Connie Mack and American baseball. And what ended up happening with him in 1942, he was on a Japanese Navy ship outside of Tokyo, and they were hit by a torpedo bomb, and he died in 1942. So not only is it an interesting story, but it's an extremely rare signature, only if we could find out which one was hit by him. So the rest of the book, there's about 20 more pages here. Really great photographs. They're a little larger than 8 by 10 size, showing this is the boat they arrived in from Japan. Obviously, 1930s, there's no air travel. Were very limited. at the time. So they came over by boat, stopping at Hawaii first. And then here's Babe Ruth being greeted by a Japanese crowd. They estimated that there was 500,000 people when they had the parade for them when they arrived that day. A few more photos of the boat and stuff. Try to cut through to some better photos in here. But, there's always Babe Ruth is right in the middle. He was obviously the big star of the time in the middle of the parade there. So we keep going. I mean, look at the crowds of people. It's just crazy how many people were here. Keep going. That's the parade. Look at the streets. They're like 20, 30 people deep lined as the motorcade's going through. Here we go. There's a few more. This is pretty cool. This is a dinner they must have had at a Japanese restaurant at the time. They were all sitting, kneeling, eating sushi, obviously. Maybe a little sake, especially for Babe Ruth. A couple more photos here. Let's see, there's a really, really great one at the end. So that's, your American team there. Babe Ruth, Connie Mack, Gehrig, Jimmie Foxx. This is one of the Japanese teams they played. The Japanese teams, they were all supposed to be like collegiate age and teenager teams. But after the first few games, after the Americans, they were very one-sided games. So they decided to pull out, their better players, Japan, and they put together some more games. And the games were a little closer, but as I said before, the Americans ended up winning all of the games. That's the Americans walking out onto a Japanese field in the stadium. And this is the picture I was waiting to get to. This is, Ruth, original photos of Babe Ruth obviously are super rare and super expensive, but especially him in uniform and an action shot nonetheless. This photo is, it's one of the best Ruth photos in existence. Just incredible. And the clarity is great on it too, which is an added bonus. So that's basically the book. It's a really interesting piece. Like I said, super rare. Another little story about Babe Ruth in this book. When we went to World War II and we were at war with Japan, the rumor is, and who knows if the story is true, but it's a great story, is that Babe Ruth took his copy of this book and threw it into the river here in New York City. I don't know if it's the Hudson River or the East River or if it happened at all, but it's just a really good story. And also what's great about this book is just if you look at the condition, and as we were going through the pages, usually they're soiled, the pages. These were basically coffee book tables. They would sit on and be shown off on everybody's table, so they were ripped. But this is just an incredible, and also the signatures you saw were awesome. One last thing real quick before we go. Here is a ball signed while they were there in 1934. You got Babe Ruth, of course, alone on the sweet spot, his usual spot. Lou Gehrig next to him here. There's about 20-something signatures total. And, of course, right here, you have Mo Berg. The catcher was a spy again. And also a Jimmie Foxx there. But lastly, you'll notice it's on a Japanese ball. So I'm going to show you another baseball we have just to compare. If you look at the size difference, it's noticeably smaller, the Japanese ball, compared to the ball we used, or we've always used here in the United States, official American League, official National League Baseball. But it's significantly smaller. It would be interesting to find out. I assume they actually just used the official Major League balls, even when they were in Japan. But who knows? Maybe they used this. Obviously harder to hit and harder to see for sure because it's smaller. But just some really cool items we just got in here at Brigandy Coins and Collectibles, New York City. If you're ever in the area, we're here on 57th Street, the corner of Park Avenue. We have a great shop loaded with one-of-a-kind items like this. So if you're in New York City, stop by. Thanks again and share this. I'm really happy to show this off. Bye-bye.